So tell me a little bit about how you make these.
Okay, so they are coil-built vases. Now, throwing is amazing. I can't throw. But also, what I really like about coil building is the fact that it's just slightly uneven, just slightly imperfect. And especially because these vases are bodies, the imperfection to them is, for me, it's quite important. I didn't want them to be exactly symmetrical and exactly, pristine. So they're coil built, which means that you build it up in layers, and each layer you smooth down. If you look at ancient ceramics, you can see the fingerprints of the makers still in the surface. And that's something that I really, really like, that idea that it ties you to these ancient makers and these ancient narratives that they're telling.
Because they're based on goddesses?
Yes, they are.
What do they each signify?
Well, I suppose it's more what they signify as a group, really.
Right.
These are facets of the goddesses. They're not any specific goddess themselves, but some of them have, animal attributes that hark back to ancient goddesses. Some of them are all human, and they are different faces of the same sort of feminine divinity, I suppose.
So they're individual, but they come together in a group, in other words?
Absolutely. They all look slightly different, but they are all part of that same whole concept, I suppose.
Your work kind of always seems to come with a nicely shaped and contained narrative. Where did this interest in storytelling, where did that come from?
I think for me, what the narrative does, along with the visual cues, is it situates it in a place, and it gives people the chance to read their own narratives from it as well. Like those visual cues, they can be taken in different ways. There's my narrative and these are my goddesses, but other people might read them differently. They might see different things in them. And that's always really appealed to me, the idea that something physical can evoke a story. I like the idea of doing something from a feminine perspective and from, a female-led viewpoint. I think the thing I like is that you can still, the body's still quite shocking when people see it now, and I always think that's funny to me, because if you look at sort of ancient art, they weren't quite as shy about it as we are now, and that's really what I'm trying to carry forwards. I mean, people are still shocked by these. They're shocked by the breasts on them.
Well, I was going to ask about the breasts.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it's something that people immediately notice, and they're always a little bit like, oh, and I quite like that little shock that you get, and it's a bit funny as well, which I quite like too.
The notion of using ceramics to tell a story, why that material in the first instance? I
think it's such a perfect material for storytelling. So I started with it and just never really looked back. And I think the malleability of it and the versatility of it is one thing that makes it perfect. For another thing, you've got the historical context. So many archaeological finds are ceramic because it lasts. And I just love the idea that we read cultures and read stories from cultures through the ceramics that they leave behind.